The room smelled faintly of wood smoke and dried herbs. A simple clay teapot sat on the low table, steam curling lazily from its spout. Beyond the window, the last blush of evening pressed against the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and soft oranges. Shadows stretched long across the worn tatami mats, swallowing corners in dimness. The grandmother sat in her rocking chair, the wood creaking with each slow sway. Her hands rested in her lap, folded neatly. 2 weathered maps of a life well traveled, etched with lines that time alone could carve. Her skin, translucent in the dying light, revealed veins like fragile threads of blue. On the floor beside her, her granddaughter sat cross-legged. A small girl, no older than 8, hair tied into 2 uneven braids, her cheeks flushed with the warmth of the day. She leaned slightly against the chair, her small hands sneaking into the folds of her grandmother's palm. The child's eyes were wide, reflecting the fading glow like pools of dark glass. "Grandma?" the girl whispered, as though afraid to disturb the silence. "What was your life like when you were little? Did you have toys like me? Did you play outside?" The grandmother's lips curved into a faint smile. Tender, tired. Her gaze wandered to the window, where the world outside was slowly dimming into memory. Her voice, when it came, was low and textured, carrying the weight of years, yet softened by affection. "No, child," she murmured. "My childhood was very different. There were no toys, only the earth, and the hunger that lived in our bellies. We played with stones, with shadows, with scraps, and yet we learned to dream." The girl tilted her head, puzzled, but her hand held tighter onto the grandmother's. "Were you sad, Grandma?" The grandmother inhaled deeply, her eyes growing distant. "Sad, sometimes. But sadness was not a stranger. It was a companion. Still, there was also laughter, stolen moments, even in the darkest times. A silence stretched between them. The child blinked, waiting. The grandmother's eyes, though weary, carried a glimmer, the spark of old embers not yet extinguished. "Would you like to hear the story of my life, little one?" The girl's face lit with eager wonder. "Yes, Grandma, please." The grandmother's hand trembled faintly as she lifted it to brush a strand of hair from the girl's face. Then, with a sigh, she leaned back in her chair. "It began many years ago, when I was just about your age. The world was not kind, but it made me strong. And everything I became was born from what I lost." Her voice thinned, softer now, and as the words drifted through the air, the room itself seemed to waver. The golden lamplight stretched, bent, the present dissolving into something older, rawer, and then the girl who would one day be a grandmother stood barefoot in a field of cracked earth. Her knees were dirty, her thin dress clung to her skin. Clouds loomed overhead, swollen with the threat of rain, though the soil beneath her feet was dry and thirsty. She was 7. The same age as her granddaughter would be generations later. Her stomach growled, a dull ache that never left, like a second heartbeat. Her mother's voice carried from the shack nearby, rough with exhaustion. "Bring in the wood before the rain comes, child." She ran, clutching a bundle of sticks too heavy for her small arms. The sky darkened, and with it came the first drops of rain, fat, cold splashes against her face. Instead of rushing inside, she paused, tipping her head back, letting the water fall into her open mouth. It was cool, sharp, and tasted of life. She laughed softly, though hunger gnawed at her belly. Inside the shack, her family huddled close. Her father's face was drawn, eyes shadowed. He had once been strong, but the famine had carved him into something smaller. Her mother's hands shook as she stirred a pot that held almost nothing. The little girl sat quietly, her wet hair plastered to her cheeks. She reached for her father's hand, but he was staring at the fire, unblinking. That night, when she lay on her mat, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I'll find berries. Tomorrow, I'll find something to fill us." Hope was all she had. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. The sound of it drumming on the tin roof had become a cruel lullaby, promising harvest while mocking their empty bowls. The little girl sat beside her mother, watching as the woman kneaded dough that was more water than flour, her hands moving slowly, almost ritualistically. The dough clung to her mother's thin fingers, stretching and breaking. "There is not enough, Mama," the girl whispered. Her mother's face was pale, her cheeks hollow. But she forced a smile, soft and tired. "It will be enough if we believe it is." When the bread finally came out of the small clay oven, its crust thin, its body hollow, the girl tore into it eagerly. It tasted of smoke, ash, and longing. But for a moment, it filled her mouth and dulled the sharp edge of hunger. She chewed slowly, savoring every dry bite. Her father took nothing. He only watched. His hands shook as he lifted his pipe. Though he did not light it, his eyes were far away, locked on memories of fields that once thrived. That night, the girl curled beside her younger brother on the straw mat. She could hear his stomach growling in the dark. Without thinking, she pressed half her piece of bread into his hand. He was too young to thank her, but he clung to it like a treasure. The girl stared at the ceiling until sleep claimed her. She was learning even then that survival was not about filling oneself. It was about giving what little you had to someone else. Winter fell hard that year. The ground hardened into stone, and the little garden outside withered into brittle stalks. The girl's father left often, sometimes for days, searching for work or food. He came back thinner each time, his eyes sinking deeper into his skull. The children waited at the window for him, listening for the crunch of his boots in the snow. One evening, he returned with nothing but silence. His lips trembled, his hands empty. The girl ran to him, clinging to his leg, but he did not meet her eyes. Her mother did not speak. She only took his coat from him, hung it by the door, and turned back to the dying fire. That night, the little girl woke to the sound of muffled sobbing. She sat up and saw her mother's silhouette by the fire, her face buried in her hands. Her father sat motionless, staring at the embers. The girl crept quietly to her brother, wrapping her arms around him, holding him close. She whispered into his ear, though she barely believed the words herself. "It will be better tomorrow. You'll see." But tomorrow never came as they hoped. Spring finally broke the frozen grip of winter, though famine still shadowed the land. One day, while wandering near the woods, the little girl found wildflowers pushing up through the thawing soil. Bright yellow blossoms. Fragile, stubborn things. She picked a handful and ran home, her bare feet pounding against the earth. "Mama, look!" she cried, bursting through the door. "They grew, even in the cold." Her mother took the flowers with trembling hands. Tears filled her eyes as she pressed them to her face, breathing in their faint, sweet scent. For the first time in many months, she laughed. Not the weary laughter of survival, but something lighter, like music. The girl had never forgotten that moment. A bundle of wildflowers had not filled their bellies, but it had fed something else. Something invisible, but vital. Hope. The memory sharpened, as though the grandmother could still smell the damp earth of that spring. Her father did not survive the year. It was not a sudden death, no loud moment to mark his leaving. It was a slow vanishing, a fading of strength. He would walk less each day, his once powerful hands trembling as he tried to lift even a bucket of water. The cough began small, then deepened, rattling in his chest until nights became endless vigils of listening to him wheeze in the dark. One morning, the little girl awoke to silence. The chair by the fire was empty. The pipe that had always rested on the ledge was gone. Her mother sat in the corner, her body folded into itself, eyes swollen but dry. The girl's younger brother asked, "Where is Papa?" Her mother did not answer. It was only later, when neighbors gathered in hushed tones, that the truth became clear. Her father had left the house in the night, walking into the woods. Some said he had gone to spare them the burden of his dying. Some whispered that he had wanted to find work one last time. Others believed he had simply given up. The little girl searched for him for days. She wandered the edge of the forest, calling his name until her throat grew raw. But no answer came. Only the sigh of wind in the trees. When she finally returned home, she found her mother at the table, staring at the empty chair where her father used to sit. Her mother's hands were folded, clenched tight, as though holding something invisible together. That night, the little girl dreamed of her father's boots crunching on snow. But when she reached out to him, the figure dissolved into mist. Return to present. The grandmother's voice grew thin as she spoke. Her gaze unfocused, lost in the distance of memory. The little girl sitting at her feet shifted uneasily. Her small fingers tightened around her grandmother's hand. "Grandma?" she whispered. "That's so sad. Didn't you ever see him again?" The old woman's lips trembled, but she shook her head gently. "No, my darling, I never did. He became part of the earth that raised us. I like to believe he still walks with me in the quiet moments. That's how I survived. By carrying him here." She tapped her chest, right over her heart. The child frowned, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I don't want you to ever go away." The grandmother leaned down, pressing her forehead gently to the child's. Her wrinkled skin touched the girl's smooth brow, 2 lifetimes meeting. "I will stay as long as I can, my love," she murmured, "and even after, I will be here. In your stories, in your dreams, in the way you love." The child nodded, though she did not fully understand. She leaned against her grandmother's knees, listening as the old woman's breath steadied, preparing to continue.